All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome to the complete set review for Duskmourn. Spooky stuff happening in this set for sure. This is my complete set review where I go over every single card in the set, organized by color for constructed and limited. This is it. This is the full Monty, right? Just did white. If you missed it, it's up on YouTube. Make sure you watch that one. They'll be going up all weekend. And if you are on YouTube, take a second, like the video, leave a comment, subscribe. A lot of work goes into these set reviews, and your support makes it possible. So thanks so much. You're all so great. I just appreciate y'all. Thanks so much. So we did white. We are on to blue now. I want to remind y'all, of course, that like I said, the follow button, support the content, and of course, Bronze Mythic, our new season. I know Bloomburrow feels like it just ended, but it starts on Tuesday the 24th, and I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to be a great draft set, so make sure you tune in on the night of the release, Tuesday the 24th, for our first episode of Bronze Mythic, and I hope to see you there. So let's get right in. Boom. We're starting out with a banger. Right out of the gate, our best in show for blue is Abhorrent Oculus. This is a wild card. Mythic rare, crazy art. 3 mana for a creature eye. Horrifying. 5/5 flyer. There's a few words on there, I guess. We'll mention that too. It just costs to cast a spell, exile 6 cards to graveyard, whatever, no big deal. And then beginning of each opponent's upkeep, manifest dread. So this card's cut from the same cloth as Murktide Regent and other really, really big delve threats. So basically this card costs like 9 with delve. We got to exile the cards in the graveyard. You can cast it for cheap. But because of that, you can play it for cheap with a counterspell mana up, or play it like turbo it out in the graveyard deck. And every upkeep, your opponent's upkeep, you get to manifest dread, which means you can look at the top 2 cards of your library. One goes to the graveyard, one goes into play as a 2/2. And that helps to fuel the next Abhorrent Oculus, because more cards in the graveyard, they kill your Oculus, it's the other card in the graveyard, and you're going in. So I think this card's awesome. Really, really good. Also cool with this card is how well it plays with Helping Hand and other reanimation effects that return small creatures, because you can just return it with no cost. Also really cool is if you manifest this thing, you flip it face up, again, no additional cost. So I think this card's got a lot of things going for it as far as synergy goes with, flipping it or reanimating it. And then it's also totally playable on the front side on rate, just being a monstrous flyer. This card's really good. Card's awesome. I think it's very, very powerful. I think you'll see this card in Standard, possibly in Pioneer. Obviously, an insane limited card. Card's just great. Abhorrent Oculus, super creepy art. Just a really, really good card. So the Oculus, best in show for blue, right out the gate. Next up is Clammy Prowler. A little less exciting. Cool color scheme on the art, but 4 mana for a 2/5 enchantment creature horror common. Whenever it attacks, another attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. So this is kind of a weird card. Blue cares about enchantments, so that part matters. This also can help push through one of your survival creatures, to help you get this survival effect where a survival creature has a trigger if it lived through combat, or if it made it to the end of its second main phase tapped, so you can like use it to push that through. It's more of like a green-white mechanic, and this can block kind of, I guess, too, but mostly this is just a filler common. Not very exciting, pretty low on rate, and then not great with synergy, just kind of a filler common for your draft deck. Creeping Peeper is next. Also just horrifying. 2 mana for a 2/1 common. It's an eye. It adds a blue, but only to cast an enchantment, unlock a door, or turn a permanent face up. So usually when we see this card, like the blue mana dork, it's limited in scope, can only do certain things. Usually it's like a 1/3 or a 1/4, So a 2/1 body is better in combat if you're attacking, but not a very good defender, which is what you want of this card usually. But if you're a super, super heavy enchantment deck, blue-white cares all about enchantments a lot. And then, of course, red-blue cares about the room enchantments, so unlocking doors. And then blue-green cares about morph stuff. So it does do things in multiple archetypes. Is it doing enough good things? We'll see. I think this card's okay, but not particularly excited about it. Honestly, blue commons are once again not that great this time around, but I don't know. I think if you would want a lot of things in your deck to do with this, be they enchantments, rooms, or permanents, but we'll see. Next up is Cursed Windbreaker. Not quite a cryptic code. 3 mana for an equipment artifact. Whenever it enters Manifest Dread, then attach the Windbreaker to that creature. It has flying, equip 3. Again, Manifest Dread is the look of the top 2. One goes into play as a 2/2, which you can flip face up for its mana value, for mana cost, and then one goes to the graveyard. Manifesting Dread is really, really good. This is effectively just like a Manifest Dread Windbreak, which is 2/2 flyer for 3, put a card in the graveyard. Obviously, you can flip it, which is kind of cool, and then give things flying later. Equip 3 is a lot, but like in the late game, giving things flying is okay. I think this card's also just kind of okay. One thing about this card is it is an equipment, so you can kind of look at it for like delirium stuff, but like it's not likely to go to the graveyard either, so Dagger Maw Megalodon is next. That thing's huge. This is the blue land cycler. Each color is one common land cycler creature. This is a pretty good one too. 6 mana for a 5/7 vigilance. That is huge.
Good lord.
Like really big. All right, and Island Cycling is obviously fine. This is a fine thing to reanimate. A little splash here with some of the black and white cards that care about reanimation. And then also, this card's just fine to cast. Like, 6 mana for a 5/7 vigilance is totally fine with a buyout early for land cycling. So, I think this card's pretty good, honestly. Has some synergy. Can go in the graveyard for some delirium stuff. Can be reanimated. Yeah. Honestly, card's a pretty good limited card. Nothing crazy, not like a super high pick or anything like that, but cool card. Shh. Don't make a sound.
It's a trap.
Trap card, folks. 2 mana for an instant. Counter spell as a controller pays 2. If they do pay 2, you have to surveil 2. So we obviously have a lot of good counters to pay 2 cards in recent memory. Make Disappear. There's a bunch more also, and this one's not very good. This one kind of gets you, right? Where, on the idea of, oh, well, if they do pay 2, I get to do something good. So it's like a win-win, right? Not really. They pay 2, resolve their good spell. You just get to surveil 2. Probably not going to swing the game in your favor. So, like, when you cast as a counterspell, it's just a bad counterspell. And if it's not a counterspell, it's a really bad card draw sort of spell. So yeah, I think this card's really, really bad. It's obviously playable and limited if you're looking for one of those cheap counterspells. But if you had to surveil 2 when you counter the spell also, that'd be sweet. But yeah, the either or here is pretty awful. Even though these cards look like it would be good, I think this is pretty Not really a big fan of this card. Trap card for blue. Don't make a sound. Up next is Duskmourn's Domination. 6 mana for an enchantment aura. Man, mind control's fallen a long way, huh? Like, geez. You control Enchanted Creature. Enchanted Creature gets -3/-0 and loses all abilities. So 6 mana for a mind control with a mega downside also. This card's like, I feel like they basically said how bad you can make mind control and make it still playable. And that's this card right here. It's obviously a playable card in limited because 6 mana, kill your creature, and then get something out of the exchange isn't the worst thing ever. It's also an enchantment. So this card's a lot unplayable. But usually mind controls are the best cards possible in limited. And this card is like, not that. But yeah, it's, not very exciting. But still, it's obviously a rule spell limited, still playable. But yeah, loses abilities too. It's just kind of rough. So, and Constructed obviously not. Enduring Curiosity. We got our sleeper card in blue. These Glimmer rares, the Enduring rares, are all very, very good. Blue 2, as one each color. For a cat Glimmer, this is a 4/3 flash. It says whenever a creature you control does combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, end step, flash this in, untap, attack with it. Draw a card. Cool. Reasonable, right? And then it has the Enduring ability where when it dies, if it was a creature, it comes back to the battlefield as just an enchantment. So it will no longer be a creature, but the Curiosity effect sticks along. So that's huge, right? So you can't really kill this thing effectively. Kind of remove the ability. This card's really interesting, like in like a Dimir kind of tempo-y shell or sort of like a tempo flash shell. You can flash it in, draw some cards, end step it, which is kind of cool. Little counter magic. Could even be cool in like control deck, honestly. Just like end step it, attack with it, draw cards, like a flash Ophidian with a little upside. But yeah, and then also imagine like a control deck with this card and Mirrors, right? Where you flash it in, you attack them and draw a card, they kill it, and the enchantment stays in play, and you have a Mirrors in play, and now you're making Mirrors tokens and just like killing stuff. So I think this card's very, very good. I think all the Enduring Curiosity cards are the Enduring cards are very, very good. It's obviously a bonkers limited card, probably almost unbeatable. But yeah, really cool card. Very sneaky. Very often these global coastal piracy effects aren't great, but this is a really nice one. So, Enduring Curiosity is our sleeper card for blue. Next up is Enter the Enigma. 1 mana for a sorcery. Creature can be blocked this turn. Draw a card. So this card is obviously kind of cool, right? Super low opportunity cost. One unblockable hit. Get to draw a card, which is cool. And then the cool thing about this card is that it puts a card in the graveyard. It helps you out with Delirium. You can push things through. Another card that plays really well with the survival cards in white, which again is kind of an odd pairing because survival is a green-white mechanic. But just a totally reasonable card. You know, one thing to be aware of is obviously be careful with this card. Your opponent has 5 open mana. Don't cast this on a good creature and get it killed in response to get blown out. But that being said, this card is super reasonable. Could be a fringe player constructed. I could see like, you know, a prowess deck playing this card to kind of push through those last few points. But again, the card draw being tied to having to target your creature and the risk of being killed in response is real for sure. But cool card. Good cheap card. There isn't really a spells matter theme in this set like there usually is blue-red. So it wouldn't as little less value there, but it's a cool little card. Next up is Entity Tracker. The mana for a 2/3 flash human scout. It's a rare. Has the Eerie mechanic. Eerie is basically just enchantment fall or constellation, where whenever you an enchantment ETBs or you unlock a room, you draw a card. So kind of a weird card here. We have a Enchantress in blue. Which is weird. But this is a very powerful card. Same idea. End step, flash it in, untap, start casting stuff. Enchantresses tend to be reasonably good. If you're playing an enchantment deck, obviously, because you're drawing a bunch of cards. And this is a decent sized body, and the flash makes it so you can play it on the end step and not have to like play it, say go and hope it lives. Card's good. I don't know if there's a deck that wants this card, but it is a very powerful effect. It's not capped either. So there's no, once a turn or whatever. You can just keep playing things and drawing cards. So Mega Bomb Unlimited, definitely playable constructed. If it's an enchantment deck, this card will probably be in it. Card's good. Next up is Erratic Apparition. 3 mana for a 1/3 creature spirit, flying vigilance. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, Eerie, this gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Till end of turn. This card sucks. This card is sort of endemic of the problem that blue cards have had in Limited the last few sets, where they're just so damn small. This is a 1/3 flying vigilance for 3, which is a awful rate. Awful. And then the pump ability is only temporary. So like maybe you chop in for 2 here and there, but then it can't block very well either. This card sucks. I think this card's very, very bad. If it was a 2 mana card, or maybe it was a 1/4 or like a 2/2, I don't even know. But as it stands, I think this card is quite bad. Just your usual blue small creature that's not very good, and that's kind of a bummer. So Erratic Apparition, not so good. Fear of Failed Tests. So again, I love these fear cards. These are all enchantments. They're all the concept of something. That's an enchantment creature. Very, very flavorful. Very, very cool. Fear of Failed Tests is 5 mana for a 2/7. Look at that booty. Woo! And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw that many cards. So you have a very, very odd card here, right? So you have a 2/7 for 5. And then we have, if it hits your opponent, you draw 2 cards at minimum, possibly more. So it's a super scroll thief. I think this card's secretly a limited banger, where you play this in your control deck, and your opponent, whenever you play a scroll thief Ophidian type card, your opponent has to kind of change the way they're playing the game, right? They can't just sit there and let you hit them with it. They have to like leave an extra creature back, or maybe try and kill it, or whatever else it might be. And because of that, that's a lot of benefit for like kind of nothing. It just kind of sits there and does its thing. It blocks really well. And if you ever do hit with it, it's insane. And there are ways to make it unblockable, as we've already seen. So I think this card's secretly really awesome and limited. If you're a control deck or a deck cares about enchantments. But yeah, obviously not a constructed card, but really, really cool limited card. Kind of a big fan of this one, honestly. Fear of Falling. 5 mana for a 4/4 flyer. Whenever it attacks, target creature defending player controls loses flying and gets -2/-0 end of turn. Great limited card. It's air elemental with upside. It's an enchantment. Just a really good limited card. Really, really cool art. Card is good. Just not how much more to say. Good limited card, nothing more. Fear of Imposters. Blue 1 for an enchantment creature, Nightmare with Flash. 3/2. Whenever it enters, counter target spell. its controller manifests dread. So, very, very interesting card here. We have a Mystic Snake, or a Frilled Mystic for cheaper. It's only 3 mana for a 3/2 flash, like an ETB counter spell. Obviously, your opponent manifesting dread is not great. Manifest dread is a powerful ability. They get a 2/2 with some upside, put a card in the graveyard, and but if you're countering a Sunfall or you're countering some really big things, could be fine. I think this card's a little narrow, but kind of a cool tempo card, honestly. Being an enchantment's kind of cool too. You wouldn't want to just play this and counter anything willy-nilly, but if you're specifically locked into countering certain cards, be it Sunfall or Atraxa or whatever other like big thing, this card does that reasonably well. But make sure you have a plan for the manifest, right? The problem with this card is that it does just trade with the manifest, but even then, cancel's still reasonable enough, I think. So I think this card's pretty cool, honestly. I'm kind of a fan of this card. I think it's definite player constructed, and in limited, very reasonable as well. Worse in limited than constructed, I think. But next up is Fear of Isolation. 2 mana for a 2/3 flyer. As initial cost to cast a spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. This card's kind of gas. Obviously, bouncing things for value is awesome. There are a bunch of things you can bounce. In this set in particular, like there's a lot of enchantments and artifacts, ETB to kill a creature. You need to bounce that. We saw the black-white like flicker deck in standard with the Pixie, where you can bounce like the Tithing Blade or stuff like that. Bouncing a 3-mana Inspector. A lot of things to bounce for value, which is kind of cool. The body's pretty good. Great limited card, I think. And then kind of a build around. Also, constructed possibly a thing. Also, you can bounce your enchantments and cast them again. So if I have like eerie triggers I want to trigger, I can play this thing and bounce a 1-mana enchantment creature and play that and get more triggers, which is kind of cool too. So kind of feels like a common, honestly. Sorry to all you Pauper players out there. But this card's good. I think it's a outside shot constructed and then a good limited card. No More Fears. Flood Pit Drowner is next. 2 mana for a 2/1 flash Vigilance Merfolk. EDB, tap, it's not a thing. Pay 2, tap this and shuffle this and the creature with a stun counter on it into their libraries. This is a phenomenal limited card, right? Like, it's just, a core Hookmaster kind of ETB stunner thing for cheaper than you usually get, Frostlinks or whatever. And they can also be a removal spell on the next turn, because you can just, like, shuffle this in. So it's like a 2-drop with flash and vigilance that stun things, it can kill things. Just a great limited card. Constructed probably isn't there, but for limited, this card's just awesome. Card's just excellent. Just really, really, really good. Get out! Blue instant. Choose one. Counter target creature or enchantment spell, or return 1 or 2 target creatures and or enchantment cards you own to your hand. So blue counter spell, creature spell is fine. Obviously the blue is much worse than blue colorless, but if it's easy to cast this card in your deck, that's reasonable enough. Bouncing your own things it's like fine if you're like want to save them from whatever, but not typically great. I don't know. It's kind of a fringe card, like. I think that in limited, if you can cast the card on turn 2, it's fine as a remove soul, and then from there, whatever. But yeah, I don't know, not super great. Ghostly Keybearer, 4 mana for a 3/3 flying spirit. Never deals combat damage to a player. Unlock a locked door of up to 1 target room you control. This card is wild. So the blue rooms are a mechanic in the entire set. We'll see them later. I'm doing them all at the end because they're sideways. But they're enchantments that are split cards. And a lot of the rooms have one cheap side and one expensive side. So if this thing is able to unlock an expensive side and give you like a 5 or 6 mana boost out of nowhere, but also on a well-costed 3/3 flyer, that's awesome. So obviously, if you're not rooming that hard, this card is, it's okay. It's not like super exciting. It's a 3/3 flyer for 4. But if you're doing the room stuff, this card is unbelievable. Constructed, no, but phenomenal limited card with an amazingly high ceiling. Glimmer Burst. Oh my god, I love this card. 4 mana instant, draw 2 cards. Offers more? I was just happy with that. I was just stoked all about that. And then make a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. This card's awesome. For limited, it's a card draw spell. It's reasonable. It's an instant. It's also a blocker if you need to stay alive. And it's also an enchantment for all of your for eerie stuff too. So that's kind of cool. And then constructed, I mean, I've played a lot of 4 mana draw 2s constructed over the last 10 years. Is that not a good enough effect anymore? I'm not sure. But making a creature to go along with your card draw is pretty sweet too. So I don't know. Constructed, probably not. I'll probably try it. But for limited, this card's great. Making a relevant creature on the board, triggering Eerie, drawing cards, all cool stuff. Leyline of Transformation. There is, of course, a Leyline in every color. Free on if you're opening hand, 4 mana otherwise. Usually pretty polarizing and not very good. This one has, when it ETBs, choose a creature type. Creatures you control are chosen type in addition to other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature spells you own that aren't on the battlefield. So this is Conspiracy, right? It's an old card. This card's bad. This is a commander card, I guess. But realistically, this effect is not worth a card, and you can't build your deck around it because you can't risk not having it in your opening hand. This card's just terrible. Don't play it limited either. It's just a waste of cardboard. I hate Leylines. Marina Vendrill's Grimoire. 6 mana for a legendary artifact. ETB, if you cast it, draw 5 cards. So 6 mana, draw 5. Okay. Can't blink it. No tricks there. You have no max hand size and don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. Or if you gain life, draw that many cards. Or if you lose life, discard that many cards. If you have no cards in hand, you lose the game. Just an absolutely absurdly wacky card. We've seen these sort of lich effects before, but cards as a resource is ridiculous. So they bolt you, you discard 3. It's just a wild card. I don't know what this card does in a story or anything like that, but kind of a silly, fun build around, maybe a commander card. I highly doubt this card will do anything constructed, but yeah, maybe there's some combo stuff here too. I don't know. It's such a weird card. And then limited, I don't think I'd want to play this card in limited, because the fear of decking would be a thing. But I guess, like, if you have a way to sacrifice this thing immediately, but then 6 mana, draw 5 isn't even that good. So, yeah, I don't know. Not really that excited about this card. It just kind of is what it is. So, yeah, sure. Overlord of the Flood. I'm sorry. It is actually funny how this card interacts with Shieldred. So, if your opponent has a Shieldred, you just die instantly. And if you have a Shieldred, you just deck instantly. That's pretty funny. But anyway, Overlord of the Flood Pits is next. This is the blue Overlord Mythic. There's one for each color. They're all mythics. They all have the impending ability, and they all have ETB and attack triggers. This is a 5 mana, 5/3 flyer. Has impending 3 mana. Whenever it ETBs or attacks, draw 2, discard 1. So it's basically just pay 3, catalog, and then in 4 turns you get a 5/3 flyer. Whenever it attacks, draw 2, discard 1. This one is less exciting than the other ones we've seen so far, because I don't think catalog's a very good base rate. The white Overlord was 4 mana, make 2/2/1 flyers, which is pretty good. So I think this is one of the weakest of the Overlords. It's still fine. I think it's maybe playable. If you care about the graveyard and stuff like that, it's reasonable enough. If catalog is like good enough in your deck, not good enough, it is a somewhat desirable effect. I think it's okay, but overall, not super excited about it. In limited, however, this card is a windmill slam. Just casting this card for 5 is insane. So yeah, I mean, it's an insane limited card, but I don't think particularly great for constructed. This does feel like more of a card you want to cast than impend. Next up is Paranormal Analyst, right? Alright. Mulder and Scully, anyone? It's meant for a 1/3 human detective. Whenever you manifest dread, put a card you put in your graveyard this way into your hand. So basically it turns manifest dread into look at 2, 1 face down, 1 to the bin, to look at 2, 1 to hand, 1 to a 2/2. This card seems absolutely insane if you are doing the Manifest Dread thing over and over again. Blue-green in Limited is all about Manifest Dread and flipping things face up and face down. This card seems like a mythic uncommon in that deck. And then honestly, I think this card is reasonably playable and constructed. Manifest Dread's a pretty powerful ability, and turning it into a card draw ability is pretty insane, and the cost here is low enough where it seems reasonable. So I think an outside shot in constructed, but definitely a ridiculous mythic uncommon limited. Card's real good. Piranha Fly, 2 mana for a 2/1 flyer, but ETBs tapped. How did this happen? 15 years ago, this is a good limited card. These days, this card is completely unplayable. Not completely, but very, very bad. This card has no synergy with anything in the entire set. Also, I guess it has synergy with Manifest Dread, where like if you flip face up, it would not come in tapped. Sure, but that's like not even like a thing, really. And These days, in modern day limited, tempo is so important. Getting on the board, having good blockers, that this creature can't block is one of the worst lines of text you can have on a limited card. And this card has that problem. It is a 2-drop, so you can play it on the play on turn 2 and you wouldn't block anyway. But for the most part, this card's pretty bad. I think if you're like a hyper-aggressive deck, this card's okay. But there aren't really any blue hyper-aggressive decks. And this card has no synergy with anything. It's not an enchantment. It's not a manifest card. It's not a graveyard card. This card sucks. Scabbling Skull Crab. 1 blue for an 0/3 crab skeleton. Has Eerie. Target player mills 2. So, mills 2 is a lot less than 3, like Hedron Crab and Friends. That being said, this is a pretty powerful effect, right? It's an 0/3, you play it. This can mill a bunch of cards. Usually, this is going to be targeting yourself, not your opponent, and getting your graveyard things going. So you can get your graveyard full for whatever things you might be doing with your graveyard, be it Delirium or Reanimate or whatever else it might be. That's pretty powerful, but, you know, Eerie is a harder thing to trigger than Landfall is on Hedron Crab, and this is not an enchantment itself either. So that's the thing. It's only 2, not 3 cards. I think this card's okay. It's a good limited card for filling your graveyard, which is pretty cool. Constructed, I mean, like, maybe it has a chance, but it would need a pretty specific scenario of, like, a deck that cares about enchantments and graveyards and can play this early and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think for the most part, this is a self-mill card. I guess in limited, if you've got like 4, then you can mill your opponent. But yeah, so, I don't know. Yeah, it's a cool card, but the 2 instead of 3 is really, really a bummer. And a reminder on Eerie. Eerie triggers on enchantments, ETB, and the Constellation. It also triggers when you when you fully unlock a room. Note that it does not count the first unlocking. So it's not like you play a room, get the enchantment trigger and the room trigger. It's only 1 trigger. So, Silent Hall Creeper is next. And again, really cool art of this card, geez. This one is pretty sweet. This was in the running for a sleeper card for blue. So mana for a 1/1 enchantment horror. It's unblockable. Whenever it does combat damage to a player, choose one that has not been chosen. Put 2 counters on it, draw a card, and then copy another creature you control. That's pretty good, right? So you have a 3/3, you can draw a card, you can copy one of your bigger creatures with other good keyboard abilities. It's cool, honestly. Pretty solid card. Not sure exactly where it would go in constructed, because, like, again, just not really sure what deck would want this, but it's an insane limited card, and then it comes down to, like, you know, if it has a place in constructed, maybe it could be cool. But yeah, insane limited card, pretty fun card overall, pretty high power level. Card's sweet. Stalked Researcher, 2 mana for a 3/3 defender, Eerie, it can attack. You see this card almost every set. That being said, I think it's probably pretty reasonable in this set. It's a good blocker, obviously. And then Eerie feels like a somewhat defensive blue-white deck, sort of, kind of. Like, I don't know. I mean, kind of defensive, but I don't even know, honestly. But card seems good. Play enchantment, attack with it. If you're playing enchantment every turn, this card's pretty good. It's not a very complicated card, folks. Just does what it does. You know? So, up next is Stay Hidden and Stay Silent. Shh. So, for Aura Enchantment. Enchanted Creature, EDB tap the creature, doesn't untap, and then 6 mana to shuffle Enchanted Creature into an owner's library, and then Manifest Dread, only as a sorcery. This card's bonkers, right? Like, what? Bingo. 2 mana for a enchantment that locks down a creature is already great, right? For a long time, that cost like 3 or 4 mana, and the last set or two, it's cost 2. But then you get to also kicker it, basically, and play 6 later to get Manifest Dread. That's awesome. This card's really, really cool. I think this card's great. Fantastic limited card. Constructed, probably not, but this card's dope. Great, great limited card. The Mind Skinner.
Waka waka.
Blue, blue, blue for a 10/1. Legendary enchantment creature Nightmare can't be blocked. If a source you control deal damage to an opponent, prevent that much damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. So, obviously a very silly meme card. It doesn't actually deal damage to your opponent, but it has 10 power. But of course, if your opponent has 60 life and not 20 life, it might as well be like a, you know, a 4/1 or whatever. It's really hard to cast. One cute thing it does do is it does turn all of your other damage sources into mill. So, like, if you had other things going on too, But at the same time, you would just kill your opponent faster than if you just dealt damage to them rather than anything else. So yeah, sure you can fling it, yada yada yada. But this is a meme silly card, nothing more. In limited, honestly, in limited, if you can cast this card, it seems fine. Like two hits and you win the game. But yeah, just a really really silly Magic card. Tale of Tomio. The meta for a saga. I believe it's the only saga in the set. And chapter 1, 2, and 3 are mill 2 cards. If 2 cards that share a card type were milled this way, draw a card and repeat this process. That's kind of cool, right? Obviously kind of high variance, but if you're playing a bunch of the same card types and you ever hit with this once, you're putting 4 cards in the graveyard and drawing a card, which is insane. Doing that a bunch of times. Then the fourth chapter is exile any number of target instant, sorcery, and or Tomio planeswalker cards from your graveyard. Copy them. You may cast any number of the copies. So this is a weird one where the first part says play any type you want. Just play a lot of them, right? But then the last part says play instant sorceries. So this card would want to be built around in a manner where you're playing all the same type. If they're all instants, they're all sorceries, cool. And you can flash it back. I would think you would want to play all enchantments because obviously this is an enchantment, but I don't know. This is a pretty powerful card though. This card was close to my sleeper reward. I think this card will do some pretty cool stuff. But overall, I don't know. It's a weird build around. It's kind of cool. Pretty high ceiling. That's how lucky you are too, I guess, right? But cool card for sure. In limited, no chance. But yeah. Cool one. Cool fun build around. Tunnel Surveyor. This is a indictment of Blue's commons, but Bombin Common for Blue is Tunnel Surveyor. This is a 3-mana 2/2. ETB make a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment token. Typically, these sort of like 2/2s that make the 1/1 are pretty good, but usually they have more upside than this. They're a flyer, or they make like a mercenary or whatever else it might be. This is a little worse than those on average, but still pretty good. And of course, it does trigger enchantment stuff because it's an enchantment token, which is kind of cool. It's 2 bodies, but overall, it's just fine. It does what you'd expect. It doesn't really have any interesting elements either beyond it making an enchantment. So, but that's it. That's your Bombin Common for Blue. Twist Reality. Blue 1. Instant. Cancel or Manifest Dread. I kind of like this card, honestly. So, obviously, Cancel is not a very good card. But it's, Cancel plus Upside, we've seen as being a playable standard card before. And then having the ability to buy out and just Manifest Dread in their end step is kind of cool, honestly. Put 2 cards in the graveyard. Plays well with the Bor Oculus. And also, sometimes you want pressure. When you're in a counterspell, like draw-go kind of game, just putting a 2/2 flash to play is like not the end of the world. So, I think this card's kind of cool. I don't think it's great. It's not particularly powerful on rate, but I can see this making its way in a few control decks in Standard, possibly. It's an okay limited card, not particularly exciting. It plays well with the common draw spell, but it's not super interesting, but it is pretty interesting as it being it's a counterspell that can buy out for a creature at a pretty cheap cost, and we don't really think we've ever seen this before, so it's kind of cool. Unable to Scream. I have no mouth and I must scream. 1 blue enchantment aura. Enchanted Creature loses all abilities and is a toy artifact creature. Base power on top of 0/2. And then as long as it's, a creature is face down, it can't be turned face up. So this is very similar to the Legitimate Business Person card. What's that card called? Where it makes it a 1/1, no abilities. That card wasn't very good. Saw some fringe play here and there. Basically, if you're mono blue and you're dying for a removal spell, this can do that job, but not great. Witness Protection, thank you, that's the card. It's a fringe player, it's an enchantment, which matters. It's an aura, which matters. Will trigger Eerie and limited. Obviously, if you're attacking and they chump block with the creature, it's not great, but it's okay. This is an okay card. Fringe playable in constructed. It's okay in limited. Just fine. Cool art. Unnerving Grasp. For the 3-mana for a sorcery. Return to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Manifest Dread. This card's dope. Freaking Mana War, folks. Cheering for Mana War. Where my Mana War fans at, right? So, 2/2 easy B, bounce a creature. Bounce anything. It's not a creature. It's non-land permanent. And obviously, Manifesting Dread's very good. This is a great card to fill your graveyard, too. Because one of the things that Manifest Dread is, it fills the graveyard very, very well. And it's kind of cool when you have a card like this, where this puts a sorcery in the graveyard, and then the Manifest Red card in the graveyard, and then when the Manifest dies, it's another card in the graveyard. So it wouldn't be insane to think you could get almost all of Delirium with just this card. And the rate's pretty good too. Card's good. Like this card a lot. Great limited card. Constructed, probably not. But overall, really cool limited card. And I'm a fan. Unwilling Vessel. Demand for a 3/2 with Vigilance. Human Wizard. Eerie. Whenever an enchantment ETBs or unlock a door, a room, put a possession counter on the vessel. And then whenever it dies, make an XX blue spirit token with flying, or X is the number of counters on Unwilling Vessel. This is a really solid limited card, but it is slow, right? It takes a while to get this card going, because you play it, you don't really want to block with it or attack with it unless you have safe attacks. You want to play more things and get it bigger, but that means you're not really doing much when you cast it, which is a little rough. But once you get that first few counters, huge upside. The first counter is good. Second counter is great. Any more than that's insane, which is really, really cool too. Card's good. Cool limited card. Nothing really more than that. If this card was cheaper for constructed, then it'd be really, really good. But like if it's like a 1/1 for 1 for constructed, then it's probably great. But for limited, I mean for constructed, not super exciting, but limited for sure. For sure. Then we have Vanish from Sight. 4 mana for an instant. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on top or bottom of their library. Surveyor 1. Again, we see this card every set. This is the 4 mana instant pseudo removal spell. Not particularly great, but if you need a removal spell, it can do that. It's an instant. It surveils, so it helps Delirium a little bit, helps Graveyard a little bit. But overall, just a fringe playable limited card. Nothing really that's exciting. And now I move on to our rooms. Doing this at the end because obviously we're in a different orientation. And the rooms are enchantments. They're split cards. So again, the repressor here is that you cast one half or the other. It ETBs and does whatever it says. It does count as unlocking it on the battlefield. So bottom's pool, 1 blue. If you unlock this room, unsummon a creature. So 1 blue, play enchantment, unsummon a creature. Honestly, not that bad. You know, it's an eerie effect that also unsummons. And then locker room is the other half, which is 5 mana. Every one of our creatures you control does combat damage to a player, draw a card. Pretty good too. So this card is pretty cool. These rooms play a lot like adventure cards. There's often a cheap half and an expensive half. So you pay the cheap half and then have mana sink later. This is an uncommon. It's pretty good for limited, I think. Just bounce a thing and then get cards back later is great. You don't want to be in a spot where you're unsummoning and not getting any value back. So unsummon plus value is pretty nice. So good limited card. This card's pretty great if you're playing an Eerie deck in limited, and it's a solid card. Not very constructed, obviously, but good solid card. Central Elevators are rare room and Promising Stairs. Central Elevator is 4 mana for a enchantment room. If you unlock this door, search library for a room card that does not have the same name as a room you control, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. That's kind of bad, right? It's really expensive. And then Promising Stairs is 3 mana for a room as well. Big for upkeep, Surveil 1. You win the game if there are 8 or more different names among unlocked doors of rooms you control. Note that it's unlocked doors. So that means that it's the rooms you haven't gone into yet. So you need to have 8 of these in play that you've only unlocked half of. That is a lot. A lot. So this card seems pretty bad to me. Both sides are not very good. It is very, very clunky. It's a dream, I guess, but yeah, not super great. So, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I had it backwards. Unlocked being unlocked, not locked. English language is tough. So I apologize. Unlock meaning a room you've already activated. So if you play Promising Stairs by itself on the battlefield, you now have 1, and you're starting there. If you unlock the elevator, now you have 2. So you need 4 pieces of cardboard with both sides open, or vice versa. That being said, it's still pretty bad. So, Michael, new sub, welcome, my friend. Thanks for coming. Meat Locker and Drowned Diner. This is a common room. 2 mana for unlock this door, tap up to 1 target creature, and then put your stun counters on it, which is not worth a card. But Drowned Diner is 5 mana for unlock this door, draw 3, discard a card. So this is kind of like your big common card draw spell. This one's pretty good, honestly. You know, 5 mana draw 3 has been playable on and off in limited regardless. But you also get the stun thing earlier on, and then there are room synergies in blue and red in particular. So this can kind of do your synergies, draw some cards. I imagine that The blue-red room deck's going to be fairly controlling, so both elements here fit pretty well. Card's fine. And then obviously, if you're playing an Eerie aggro deck, I think that, like, getting a blocker out of the way, getting some damage, drawing cards out is pretty cool, too. So, card's cool. I like this card. Not like a super high bank or anything like that, but cool limited card for sure. Then we have Mirror Room and Fractured Realm. Mirror Room is 3 mana for an enchantment. Unlock this door and create a token that's a copy of a creature you control. Except it's a reflection, so it's a 3 mana clone for your own stuff, which is not great. And then 7 mana Fractured Realm, Panharmonicon. Double your triggered abilities. Yeah, just too expensive, I think. Clone your own thing is not great. And then 7 mana of Panharmonicon is also not super great either. This feels like a commander card. Just like, it's a big, crazy, go crazy thing, but in most normal games of Magic, this game won't really do that much, so not that exciting. And then our last room is another common, Underwater Tunnel or Slimy Aquarium. The tunnel is just Surveil 2, and the aquarium is unlock this door, Manifest Dread, and put a +1 counter on that creature. So this is a 4 mana for a 3/3 Manifest Dread, and 1 mana to Surveil 2. Both pretty below rate, but I think if you're playing a deck that cares about enchantments, Eerie, or rooms, this card could be playable and limited, but pretty fringe. Not particularly exciting overall. So to recap for blue, a Bor Oculus is our best in show. Enduring Curiosity is our sleeper card. Our Bombin Common is Tunnel Surveyor, and our trap card is Don't Make a Sound. We got more to do, folks. Is that Jace? Jace is here too? I didn't know Jace was here. I don't know. That's cool. All right, so blue's all set. Block's coming up. You folks love you. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on my cards that I chose, and let's rock and roll.